want to be upfront about something before I start. I'm not a writer. I'm not trying to go viral. I'm not looking for attention or followers or any of that. I'm sharing this because I genuinely don't know what else to do with it. What you're about to hear is 3 separate stories, 3 separate people, 3 separate nights. And for a long time, I thought they had nothing to do with each other. I was wrong. I'll start with the one that still keeps me up at night. Not because it was the most dangerous, though it was close, but because of what we found at the end, because of what it meant. Her name is Valentina. She's 24 years old in her 2nd year at Sapienza University of Rome studying international law. And she is, without question, one of the sharpest people I have ever met in my life. She shared her story in a private group we're both part of, a small online community. Nothing dramatic, just a handful of people who share strange experiences. When I read what she wrote, I asked for her permission to share it. She said yes. She said she wanted people to know. This is her story, in her own words. I have this habit at bars that probably sounds terrible when I say it out loud. I pretend to be less intelligent than I am. Not in a cruel way, not to manipulate anyone. It's more like an experiment, a way of observing how people behave when they think nobody is paying attention. And I'll be honest with you, what I've observed over the years has not made me particularly optimistic about humanity. My friend Chiara and I were at a rooftop bar in Trastevere. It was a warm Saturday night in late September, the kind of night where Rome looks like it was designed specifically to make you feel something. We'd just gotten our Aperol spritzes when 2 men approached us. Their names were Alessandro and Nico. They were charming, confident without being arrogant, well-dressed. No immediate red flags, which, if you've spent any time in Roman nightlife, you know is actually saying something. Chiara clicked with Nico almost immediately. I talked to Alessandro, and honestly, he was interesting. We talked for a long time, much longer than these kinds of conversations usually last. At some point, Chiara pulled me toward the bathroom and whispered that she was thinking of going home with Nico. I raised an eyebrow. She's not impulsive. She's the careful one, the one who always tells me to slow down. So hearing this from her was genuinely surprising. I didn't argue. I just said, let's go back and see. As we were walking back across the rooftop, I spotted Alessandro and Nico before they spotted us. And something was wrong. They weren't laughing anymore. They weren't relaxed. They were standing very close together, speaking in low voices, with their backs slightly turned. Alessandro had his hand over his mouth the way people do when they don't want to be lip-read. The moment they noticed us approaching, everything shifted. Instantly, like a switch. Smiles back on, posture relaxed. Alessandro spread his arms and said, "We ordered you something while you were gone." On the table were 4 drinks, 2 Aperol spritzes, ours, and 2 other drinks. Bright yellow, slushy, completely unidentifiable. I looked at the yellow drinks for exactly 1 second. Then I smiled at Alessandro, the most innocent smile I could manage, and said, "Oh, those look amazing. You know what? I think those might be too good for us. You should have them. We wouldn't want to steal your drinks." Before he could respond, I slid our Aperol spritzes toward them and picked up one of the yellow drinks. Chiara looked at me like I'd lost my mind, but she picked up the other one. Alessandro stared at me, not for long, just a second. But in that second, something moved behind his eyes that I will never forget for the rest of my life. Then he smiled. He said, "Touché," and he picked up the Aperol spritz. We stayed another 40 minutes. We laughed, we talked, everything seemed completely normal. Then, we went back to Nico's apartment. I know how that sounds, but I want you to understand. I was watching everything. I was completely sober. I was paying attention to every single detail. The apartment was clean, but strangely empty, almost like nobody actually lived there. No personal photographs, no clutter. The refrigerator had 6 cans of beer and nothing else. We sat down, Nico put some music on, and within 20 minutes, both men were unconscious. Not drunk, not sleepy, unconscious. They went from laughing and talking to completely unresponsive within the span of about 4 minutes. Alessandro slid sideways on the couch and didn't move again. Nico's head dropped forward like someone had cut a string. Chiara looked at me. I looked at her. "The drinks," I said. She went pale. We left. We walked out of that apartment, down the stairs, and into the street. We didn't run. Running attracts attention. We just walked, fast and steady, until we were 3 blocks away. Then Chiara started shaking. We never called the police. I know that's the part people will question, but think about it from where we were standing. We had no evidence. We had touched nothing. We had taken nothing. All we had was 2 unconscious men and a theory. But what I keep thinking about is this. Why would they invite us back to that apartment if they knew they were going to pass out? Unless they didn't know the dosage, unless they miscalculated, unless something went wrong with their plan. I've thought about this every single day since it happened, and I've never once come up with an answer that doesn't terrify me. That was Valentina's story. Now let me tell you about Marco. Marco is 31 years old. He moved from Florence to a small rental house on the outskirts of a rural town called Monticiano about 8 months ago. He'd been living in a cramped apartment in the city center for years and was desperate for silence. He found silence. He also found something else. This is his account, reconstructed from a series of voice memos he recorded on his phone in the days following the incident. He sent them to me because he said he couldn't write it down. Every time he tried, his hands stopped working properly. He said, "I'm recording this because I need to say it out loud and there's nobody here to say it to. I moved to this house because I wanted to be alone, and for 7 months alone was exactly what I was. No neighbors within earshot. Pine trees on 3 sides. A gravel driveway that crunches so loud you can hear a car coming from half a kilometer away. I liked it. I actually liked it. Tonight I got home from work around 9:30. Long shift, the kind where your brain just shuts off and you move on autopilot. I changed my clothes, ordered food from the only place that delivers out here, and sat down to watch something on my laptop. The doorbell rang at 10. I remember thinking, that was fast. I went to the door and looked through the peephole. There was a man standing on my porch. Hoodie, hands in his pockets, no bag, no food. Nothing that looked anything like a delivery driver. I don't know why I opened the door. I genuinely don't know. My brain was running on empty and I opened it. I kept the chain on. I asked him if he had my food. He paused, then he nodded. He said he wanted to double-check the order before getting it from his car. And that's when something woke up in my chest. Because there was no car in my driveway. I could hear the gravel. I always hear the gravel, and I hadn't heard anything. I told him to bring the food to the door or I was calling the police. He didn't respond. He just muttered something, very quietly. And then he turned, walked down the driveway, and disappeared into the dark. I stood at the door for about 30 seconds. Then I called the restaurant. The food hadn't left yet. I called the police. They logged it, said they'd note it for patrol, but weren't able to send anyone out immediately. The actual delivery arrived 20 minutes later. I took the food, I locked every door and every window, and I tried to convince myself it was over. It wasn't over. I was sitting in the living room with the lights off, watching my laptop trying to calm down. When I heard it, a scraping sound coming from the back of the house, I muted the laptop. Silence. Then it came again, slow and deliberate, metal against wood. It was coming from the back door. I watched the door handle. It moved, not violently, not desperately. It moved the way a handle moves when someone who knows what they're doing is testing it. Methodical, patient. I called the emergency line. I locked myself in my bedroom. I sat on the floor with my back against the bed and a kitchen knife in my hand. And I waited. The officer arrived in 15 minutes. They searched the property. Nobody was there, but one of them called me outside and showed me something near the back door. Fresh pry marks on the door frame. Someone had been working on that lock. The officer said it looked like a flathead tool, maybe a crowbar. He said whoever it was knew what they were doing. They increased patrols and said they'd keep an eye on the area. 3 nights later, I woke up to sirens. 3 police cars flew past my house at full speed. 20 minutes after that, 2 officers knocked on my door. They showed me a photograph on one of their phones. It was him, the man from my porch. They'd caught him trying to break into a house 2 streets over. And when they ran his details, he had a prior, breaking and entering, stalking, and 1 count of aggravated assault that had been quietly plea bargained down to nothing. I identified him. They told me I wouldn't have to worry about him anymore. I moved out of that house 3 weeks later, not because of him, but because of what the landlord told me when I handed back the keys. He said, "You're the 3rd tenant in 2 years to leave early." The other 2 didn't tell me why either. 2 stories, 2 close calls, 2 people who got out. Now I'll tell you about the one that started all of this, the one I was actually there for. There were 4 of us, me, Luca, Dante, and Sofia. We'd been urban exploring together for about 2 years. Milan and the surrounding areas have more abandoned buildings than most people realize. Old factories, shuttered hospitals, decommissioned rail stations. We weren't thrill seekers exactly. We were just curious, the kind of curious that gets you into trouble. The school had been on our list for months. It was a large building on the outskirts of the city, a former elementary school built in the late 1930s, closed down in the early 1990s after structural concerns were flagged and never addressed. From the photos we'd seen online, it was extraordinary. Marble floors, vaulted ceilings, long corridors with tall arched windows that let in strange angles of light even in complete darkness. We went on a Thursday night in late July. Luca drove. He parked on a side street about 4 blocks away and we walked the rest on foot. The fence around the perimeter had already been cut. A clean gap near the east corner, wide enough to step through without snagging your jacket. We took that as a good sign. We shouldn't have. The door we found wasn't boarded. We pushed it open and stepped inside, even with 4 flashlights. Good ones, the kind that light up an entire room. The building swallowed the light in a way that felt almost deliberate. The hallways stretched longer than they should have. The shadows gathered in corners that seemed too deep. Every sound we made came back to us slightly wrong, like the echo had learned our voices and was practicing them. The walls were covered in graffiti, some of it beautiful, some of it strange. In the basement, we found the first one, a large symbol painted on the floor in what looked like black paint. A circle with markings inside it. Not a pentagram exactly, but something geometric, something with intention behind it. We didn't linger. Luca made a joke about it, and we moved on. We should have left then. We made our way to the second floor. One of the classrooms had a completely untouched section of wall, pale plaster, unmarked, almost luminous in the flashlight beam. Luca and Dante wanted to tag it. Sophia and I said we'd keep moving and look for a way to the roof. We disappeared down one of the dark corridors. We never found the roof. What we found instead was a stairwell that led down to a sub-basement level that hadn't shown up in any of the photos we'd seen online. A level below the basement, accessible through a door that had been very recently unlocked. The padlock was still hanging open, the hasp still warm when Sophia touched it. We looked at each other. We should have gone back upstairs. We went through the door. The sub-basement was different from the rest of the building. Cleaner. The dust on the floor had been disturbed recently. You could see the patterns where things had been moved, where feet had walked, where something heavy had been dragged. In the center of the room was a circle, not painted, arranged. Stones and small glass objects laid out in a deliberate pattern on the floor, a circle within a circle. And in the middle, a collection of items I still can't fully explain. Photographs, scraps of paper with handwriting on them, and what looked like a detailed map of part of the city. Sophia grabbed my arm. I heard it a second later, footsteps, above us, moving fast. We ran back through the door and up the stairwell and collided with Luca and Dante on the second floor landing, both of them breathing hard, both of them looking at something over our shoulders. "Run," Luca said. We ran. Here's what Luca and Dante had found while Sophia and I were in the sub-basement. They'd gone back to the tagged classroom to check on their work when Dante noticed that his bag, the one with the extra paint cans, the one he had set against the wall, was gone, not fallen over, not knocked aside, gone. They searched the room. Nothing. They went looking for us, moving through the dark corridors of the upper floor, when Dante heard something from a small side room. A faint metallic sound, like objects being handled carefully. He assumed it was us. He pushed the door open. 3 figures were seated in a circle on the floor of that room. They were wearing dark clothing. They appeared to be examining something, passing objects between them, turning them over in the beam of a handheld light. One of them looked up. Then all 3 of them stood up, and Dante's bag was sitting in the corner of the room behind them. They ran. They found us. We all ran together. We got turned around in the corridors. The building was a genuine maze, especially in the dark, especially while terrified. We stopped at a corner somewhere in what felt like a completely different wing, trying to get our bearings, and then we heard it. A hissing sound, coming from somewhere in the dark ahead of us. Not an animal. Too controlled for an animal. Too deliberate. We froze. Then a voice. Male. Very calm. He said, "We saw you go downstairs. We know what you found." We didn't wait another second. We ran. This time I could hear footsteps behind us. More than 3 sets. More than 4. The building had felt empty when we arrived. It was not empty. They were yelling things I don't want to repeat here. By some miracle, Luca took a turn that brought us back to the original entrance. We hit the door at full speed, crossed the fence and ran 4 blocks to the car without stopping. Nobody spoke until we were back on the highway. Here's what I've been thinking about for 3 months. The sub-basement, the circle, the photographs, and the map. One of the photographs, I only glimpsed it for a second before Sophia pulled me out of there, was of a house. A small 1-story house, pine trees on 3 sides, a narrow gravel driveway. I didn't know what it was at the time. I didn't make the connection until Marco sent me his voice memos, and then Valentina shared her story. And I started thinking about dates. The night we were in that school, a Thursday in late July, the night Valentina switched the drinks, a Saturday in late September, the night Marco had a man on his porch, a Tuesday in early October. 3 different nights, 3 different people, 3 different situations. But when I laid them out in order, when I looked at the map we'd glimpsed in that sub-basement, When I thought about the photographs arranged on the floor, when I remembered what Marco's landlord said about the previous tenants, when I thought about Alessandro's face in that 1 second before he smiled, something assembled itself in my mind that I wish I could disassemble. These weren't random events, these were organized. Someone was watching, someone was selecting, someone was running rehearsals. We stumbled into the planning room. Valentina disrupted an operation. Marco survived because of a gravel driveway, and somewhere out there, in a building that still exists on the outskirts of Milan, there are photographs on a floor and a map on the wall and a circle of stones that nobody has officially investigated because nobody has officially reported it. Because what would we say? We were trespassing. We were in a place we had no right to be. We saw things we can't fully explain and felt things we can't fully prove. I've shared this because it's the only thing I can think of to do. If you're in Italy, if any of this sounds familiar, if you've had a night that didn't add up, a stranger who appeared too quickly, a situation that resolved itself just a little too neatly, pay attention to that feeling. The one in your chest that says something is wrong before your brain has figured out what it is. That feeling is not anxiety. That feeling is information. Trust it.